Amidst the COVID-19 pandemic, one topical issue on public discourse is the rising debt profile of Nigeria, with the Senate approving additional loan to bring the total to 33 trillion naira. While some hold the opinion that loans is necessary to meet high infrastructure demand of such a developing country like ours, others opine that such debt hitting the roof is unacceptable. Our guest today, an African development analyst, shall be discussing on issues around Nigerian debt, even in this pandemic period. Welcome to TV and Business Daily. I am Chiwendu. This is Yago. Today we shall be discussing on Nigerian debt profile, the matters arising. But first, let's look at what is happening in the business world. Deposit money banks are adjusting their operations and introducing measures for customers to access the banking halls as the lockdown directive is. While some have been sending lists of branches that will open during the week, all the banks say use of face masks has become a mandatory requirement for every customer coming to the banking hall. Some banks have also arranged chairs and canopies for customers to sit outside while awaiting their turn to be called to enter the hall. GT Bank said in an email to its customers that it was reopening more branches across the country as its banking hour had also been extended from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. daily. Fidelity Bank in an email to its customers said consistent with the advised COVID-19 precautionary measures, customers must wear face masks to access offices. Access Bank in a mail said it was opening branches short during the lockdown and many other banks. Transaction on the floor of the Nigerian Stock Exchange on Monday halted marginally. Negative sentiment witnessed last Friday to begin the week with a 37 billion naira gain. The market performance indices, the NSE All Share Index, appreciated by 0.29%, with market price closing positive as 25 stock gain against 13 losers. Consequently, the All Share Index grew by 70.42 basic points or 0.29% from 23,871.33 index point last Friday to 23,941.75, while the market capitalization of equities appreciated by 37 billion naira to close at 12.477 trillion naira from 12.440 trillion naira. On the activities chart, premium subsector dominated in volume term with 188.5 million shares exchanged in 1,649 deals. The subsector was enhanced by the activities in the shares of Zenith Bank PLC and Essence Bank PLC. The Central Bank of Nigeria and the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation have agreed to spend over 1 billion naira on the quarantine and feeding of over 3,000 Nigerians awaiting evacuation in foreign countries. The two organizations are expected to share the over 1 billion naira cost of hotel accommodation and feeding of the returnees for 14 days on arrival in the country amid the coronavirus pandemic. The Minister of Foreign Affairs, Geoffrey Oyema, disclosed this during a briefing by the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 in Abuja. The federal government had come under fire for asking prospective returnees to pay 290,000 naira for their isolation and feeding in hotels in Lagos and Abuja ahead of their evacuation from the United States, United Kingdom, India, China, Thailand, and Canada. The federal government says it's targeting about 5 million jobs for farmers through the 995 million euro agricultural mechanization program. The initiative was aimed at boosting food security for the country. Under the initiative, it added that facilities comprising tractors and other agricultural mechanization were expected to be leased out to Nigerian farmers. It stated that this was coming under the in-kind facility for agricultural mechanization. Senior Special Assistant to the President on Agriculture, Dr. Andrew Kwasari, was quoted in a statement obtained on Sunday as saying that the agricultural machines would come from Brazil. It said when the program takes off fully, it would create at least 5 million jobs and 35 million nutritional effect and economic impact on Nigerians. And that's the business update on Television Nigerian. I am Chiwendu. This is Seko. Okay, before we go into further discussion on the Nigerian debt profile and matters arising, let's listen to the Director General of the Debt Management Office, Patience Oniha, who recently announced Nigerians' borrowing plans. The program continues shortly.
Expenditure framework for 2020 to 2022 is being revised. So the total new domestic borrowing in that in the 2020 budget, which is a draft, still a draft until it is approved by the Federal Executive Council and the National Assembly, is about 2.644 trillion naira. Okay, so that includes the 850 billion that is being localized. And if we take note of the fact that we have already raised 570 billion of that, it really means that for the rest of the year, from May to December, if the necessary approvals are secured, the new domestic borrowing would be about 2 trillion naira, 2.07 trillion naira. So it's actually higher than 850. One of the reasons we were externalizing our borrowing, some part of our borrowings this past few years, was, like we said, to create space for the local market. But as it is, things have changed in the international markets, not just for Nigeria, but for any country that doesn't really have a superior rating. So where will the money come from the domestic market? We have a vibrant domestic market, and one of the things we have been able to achieve collectively is to have a large group of investors. So there are the pension funds, which are the obvious ones, but there are also fund and asset managers, as well as the insurance companies. The annuity funds have come on very strongly, and then some of the government sector that have to invest in government securities. So let's just say if you look at our subscriptions, the investor base is quite diverse, so we are not relying only on pension funds. But let me quickly add that apart from the fact that there are these several sources and that pension funds keep growing by definition, there are automobiles of about 7.34 trillion naira that would mature this year. So we also expect that funds coming from that will be invested in the FGN securities that will be issued, because in terms of risk, really, they are low and they are safe. And as you know, there isn't, I guess the emphasis on automobiles has reduced a bit. So if you put all of those together, we think we'll still be able to raise the money, and there will still be money for
Thanks for joining us again, and in case you just joining us, it's TV and Business Daily. Like I said earlier, we shall be discussing on the nations that profile and matters arising. My guest is here in the studio. He is an Africa development advocate and a public affairs analyst, Mr. Morgan, or let's say Comrade Morgan Ocheko. You're welcome to TV.
Thank you very much.
Okay, now you've listened to the Director General of the Debt Management Office on the on the plans of Nigerian to borrow. So, what's your opinion on that?
My opinion are that for a developing country like Nigeria, borrowing becomes very necessary if we must grow as a nation. But again, it all depends on what we are borrowing, from what source we are borrowing, and what do we intend to do with the borrowed fund. For instance, if you borrow and then you invest such borrows into very sustainable ventures that are quite productive, for instance, like you invest in real estate, you invest in digital economy and in agriculture, those are very valuable areas to actually invest borrowed money in, because they will in turn yield turnover. But again, some government will tend to borrow and then invest in very selfish ventures that are not quite productive. That instance becomes very, very dangerous. But for every developing country, borrowing is quite necessary, because as a developing nation, you don't have what it takes for you to stand on your own. So it depends on the will of the people borrowing or the government borrowing, and what it intends to use such fund borrowed for.
So how do you think this COVID-19 has affected us, especially in the area of borrowing the debt, Nigerians' debt?
Well, COVID-19 is a global pandemic that the world never expected it to come at this time. It has altered a lot of things, like it's setting a new world order. It has its very negative effect on our economy, especially as regards with the borrowed funds, because in the budget of every government, there's always a structure for either to pay back loans or to service them. In this instance, as we were made known by the Debt Management Office, I think it has been altered. Every feasible plan has been altered by this pandemic with regards to government's intention to service or pay back loans. We were meant to understand that in the last budget, about 2.4 trillion naira was set aside to service or to pay back loans. But the government is trying to make a review on that now to see how it can be overstretched to actually cushion the effects of loan settlement or servicing. Now, it has also affected us in these other ways, like Nigerian, of course, we know major source of revenue has been oil. Yeah. And it is no news what is happening to that sector globally today. There has been this drastic fall in prices of crude, and then there is also dwindling trade arrangements that has seriously been posed by this pandemic, this unfriendly pandemic. It has its own toll on the economy of every nation. Nigeria is not left aside. So to me, it is really going to be an issue trying to cope with tackling some of these issues.
Okay, to me, I feel that borrowing is not a bad thing. But do you think Nigeria, as a developing country, need to borrow so much money to fix Nigeria and for some other things?
Of course, borrowing. People, when you talk about borrowing, people don't tend to understand the rationale behind borrowing. People think it's like the normal man going to a fellow to borrow money, and then you plunge them into ventures that eventually will not yield the necessary turnover. But in this case, if you talk about borrowing, you have to look at the concept of borrowing, because there are borrowed funds that are either domestic and then they are also external. Okay. Now, if you want to look at a government that strives to make progress, the government tends to pay more attention to internal debt rather than the external ones. Because economics made us understand that internal debt stabilizes the economy of a country, because it also increases its per capita growth. Why for external debt, the reverse is usually the case. Because in the case of external debt, depending on where you are borrowing from and the terms of agreement, for some of those agreements, you will have a stipulated period of time to pay those debt back, and failure to do so will incur some sort of penalty, some penalties like forfeiture of government assets and devaluation of the national currency. Why in the case of internal debt, it is meant to understand that it also helps stabilizes the growth of those internal lending agency, be it commercial banks, be it private companies or individuals. What it does is, when those debts comes in with their interest rate, it tends to boost the strength of those agencies or companies, and thereby putting it on a strong footing. And for every countries that can be termed developed, you notice that our local industries are doing extremely well.
All right, okay, thank you. So with the recently approved 33 trillion naira by the Senate, what do you expect? Like, we Nigerians, what do we expect? Again,
Nigerians will have diverse opinion with regards to what to expect with the recently approved
the 33 trillion naira.
33 trillion naira, yeah. Not 33 trillion naira per se, but that will short our debt profile to 33 trillion naira.
Okay.
Well, it is still boiled down to the willpower of the people in government. Like I have said earlier on, borrowing is necessary for a developing country like Nigeria, but what are we actually borrowing for? Are they for productive ventures, or they are just for selfish ventures? For instance, if you borrow money to begin to buy cars for government officials, legislatures and the rest of them, those are quite unproductive ventures that can actually plunge any nation into serious quagmires. You understand? But if you are borrowing to invest in education, to invest in digital economy, to invest in agriculture, I think it is quite laudable, and we should encourage such to happen, so long as such borrowings does not go out of the confines of what we can contain in terms of trying to service those loans or try to pay them back.
So I want to ask that question. How do you think Nigerians will actually pay this money back? You know, after you borrow and borrow and borrow and all that, how do you intend to pay back?
For instance, whenever a government draws her how do I put it? Her budget.
Okay.
There's always a fund set aside to look after that. Like in the last budget, it was about 2.4 trillion naira, which, like we all know, that is largely affected now. We don't know. I think modalities are in place for policies maker to think and then sort ways with which such menace can be tackled. Now, for the government of Nigeria, which we are particular about now, we have always have this willpower to do so, because when you want to talk about a major source of revenue, which is the oil, Nigeria tends to be a major player globally in that respect. But over the past few months, that have actually dropped with regards to the things that have happened to the crude market. And one will begin to wonder what we will have to do to be able to pay this debt back. But I want to believe in the diversification agenda of this very government, with the things they are trying to put in place to see that a lot of these funds generated could actually come from other sectors apart from crude oil. If things go too well and there's commitment and sincerity of purpose, I think Nigeria is large enough, blessed with enough resources to be able to generate what they could service or pay these loans with.
But it may take time.
Definitely. Definitely.
All right, let's take a quick break, and after the break, we'll continue from where we stopped, so stay tuned.
My name is Chiwendu Osisiago, presenter at Television Nigerian Business Daily. In a globalizing world, ours is to keep you engaged, informed, and educated on contemporary happenings in the business world. We therefore command a special audience of business-minded viewers who are eager to know more about business and your business. Why don't you take advantage of our special affordable offer to let the world know about your concepts, your goods, and of course, your services? You can call us on 080-3071-6959 or 070-3234-9054. You can also visit us at Television Nigerian in Guzapi, Abuja, and follow us on all our social media handles on Facebook, YouTube, and of course on Twitter at Television Nigerian. Your business is our concern.
Thanks for joining us again, and in case you're just joining us, it's still TV and Business Daily, and we'll be discussing on Nigeria's debt profile matters arising. My guest is an African development advocate, Comrade Morgan Ocheko. Okay, now we're talking about the debt, and you said it is not bad to borrow money, right? So how do you envisage harder times for Nigerians post-COVID-19 pandemic?
Wow. I don't only envisage harder time for Nigerian post, not only Nigeria, but for the entire globe post COVID-19 pandemic. This is so because this has altered a lot of activities the world over. It has altered also a lot of means of livelihood with regards to the common man, and even the way governments of nations runs her businesses. You will agree with me that, especially here in Nigeria, over the last 2 to 3 months, everything has been at a standstill. The government is only trying to ease the economy gradually. Now, one will want to imagine the amount of damage this has caused to fund mobilization, fund generation, and other means of putting life back together. Okay. Now, it's for whatever it is lost over the past 2 to 3 months, it will require that the government or individuals takes close to 6 months to a year to recover. So you can imagine the loss that will happen within those recovery process. Yeah. So I think harder times is what we should expect, especially immediately after this pandemic.
So how do you think we'll survive?
Of course, we have always survived as a people.
Yeah.
And I want to believe the government are also looking into those challenges, and they are trying to put modalities in place. We have a lot of policy makers sitting on the round table every now and then, and they are working their heads out to ensure that this whole situation doesn't get to an unbearable state, especially after this pandemic. So I want to believe in our ability to always beat tougher grounds and then make progress. I think Nigeria will come stronger after the challenges.
Yeah, we hope so. Okay, finally, now, what's your final, your final advice to probably the government and to our viewers out there?
Let me start with our viewers out there first. I want to start by stating that let us not expect a rosy moment immediately after the pandemic. We should brace up to whatever challenges this will throw us into, and then cooperate with the government to see that everything or every rule, especially as regards to social distancing, are followed strictly, so that we can make away with this pandemic in very good time and be able to have our lives back again. And then on the part of the government, we want to commend the effort of the government with how they have handled this situation so far. But again, during this period is not even the issue. Post COVID-19 is where the challenges are. And as much as I encourage the government to go into borrowing so long as it will sustain the way things are run and then better the life of the common man, they should do so. But they should do so with that strong willpower, with that act of patriotism, with that sincerity, to ensure that every fund borrowed is channeled into proper use that could in turn bring about productivity to see that we are out of this quagmire in very, very quick time.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. We just hope that Nigerians will know that this is just a matter of time. Before we know it, we'll be out of this.
Of course, the good thing about this whole thing is, as unfortunate as it may be, it is a global issue. Yeah. We are here battling with ours, as strong as American is. I don't think they find themselves in this kind of situation in recent time. That is as strong as American is. We also listen to news and see what happens in the UK, what happens in other parts of Europe and Asia, and you want to thank God that God is being fed to Nigeria and to Africa.
All right, thank you so much, Comrade Morgan Ochako, for coming on TV and Business Daily. It was good to have you.
Thank you very much.
And that's the much we have for you today on TV and Business Daily. I am Chiwendu Osisiago, and don't forget that you can follow us on all our social media platforms, on Facebook, on YouTube, and of course on Twitter. And you can also advertise on our program. Do have a wonderful day. Bye for now.